spoke for...
This was like an IMF negotiation. Okay.
So let me start now before the time.
So I give you 4 and I give you 3.
Thank you. Yes. So Randy, I mean, Felix, I've known him to it's early morning, so the kids are in school, to enjoy this kind of political masturbation, you know, all the time when he used to address issues. And he leaves the substantive issues that affect the Ghanaian people and run around with figures that sometimes are untrue and also sometimes even do not impact on the lives of the people. And now I'll take a few, then I'll come into the economy. But let me correct this falsehood he put out.
Remember, you have 3 minutes left.
Yes. On the issue of the industrialization, I insist, and I put it on record here, that no government since 1992, he jumped from the 92 and went into independence, and was speaking of Kwame Nkrumah, no government since 1992 has embarked on such deliberate radical industrialization drive than we are seeing under Nana Akufo-Addo. That is fact. In fact, he speaks of Kwame Nkrumah and all the factories that he built and state-owned. Randy, they, under the NDC, passed a law. They passed the Diversity Implementation Act to sell off state factories under his government, under the NDC. They passed out laws that sold out close to 200 factories owned by the state, rather than building new ones. So when he comes and said, how many state factories, pick our manifesto. There is no way in our manifesto that we said that Nana Akufo-Addo's government is coming to build factories as a government for the state. It is stated verbatim in our manifesto. And maybe you should read it before you comment on it. The manifesto says that in collaboration with private sector, factories will be set up in every district to stimulate local economic development. It is here in the manifesto. That is what we said. So he cannot come and sit here, set his own questions, rattle all of them, and then expect that we take it hook, line, sinker. Again, he speaks of factories that he bought a list here, about 140 companies that they have built. Randy, the 278 factories that the MPP mentioned under the 1D1F does not, and let me repeat, does not include all the factories that have been built by private people from 2017 to 2021. Those factories that he speaks of, 140 that was built under the NDC, there is no government in our republic that doesn't have private sector people build their factories. If we are to add it to the 1D1F, we are going to move into the thousands. We are speaking of a deliberate policy, industrialization policy that is geared towards stimulating local economics in the district, and that is what 1D1F is about. Now, let me quickly move to the economy and the IMF. Let us put it on record, Randy. Nobody can run away from that. There has never been any economy as worse in this country than we saw between 2013 and 2015. What is worse than a country where people cannot even have electricity to sleep in? What is worse than an economy where private factories would have to shut down their businesses and their plants because they cannot afford to buy fuel to power their electricity? What is worse than a country where you withdraw all the social safety net of the people simply because you do not have money to take care of them? What is worse than a country where the public sector people work for a year and then you say even though they work for 3 months, you can afford to pay only 12 months, you can afford to pay only 3 months. What is worse than that? Let me quickly wrap up by going to why the NDC went into the IMF. And he sits here and says, when they were going to IMF, let me tell you, in the our National Economic Forum, the one they had at Senchi, these were the reasons. And Randy, I want you to pay very close attention. They said, for 2 consecutive years, 2012 and 2013, macroeconomic targets have been missed. Annual budgets have not been implemented as approved by budgets. Media reviews have sometimes been used to introduce new policies rather than for an assessment of policies. Budget outcomes have deviated significantly from forecasts and therefore have tended to be perceived as not dependable. It's a tall list. There's no time. But the point I am making here is that never in the history of this country have we seen what we saw under the NDC. In our worst of forms and the MPP, even under this current condition where we are going to the IMF for balance of payment support, we are still keeping our people at work. We are still paying the salaries of our citizens. We are keeping energy, the number one critical thing that is needed to stimulate private sector and public sector on. We are ensuring that people who are required in public sector to work are recruited without keeping them at home. This is in our worst of forms. In our worst of forms, 100,000, let me wrap up. In our worst of forms, 100,000 of Ghanaian people who under their government remained at home because they could not afford, are in senior high school studying. In our worst of form in this country, under the Adodankwa Ekufo as we speak, safety nets, like the allowances for teachers and nurses, have not been withdrawn from them. That is the kind of economy that we experience